This insert is brought to you with the compliments of Radio Cape Pulpit.
Denise Padayachee is a lawyer by training and the founder of Wells Training and Mission NPC. Her calling is to help equip and activate an army of forerunners and revivalists who love God deeply, live as the beloved, and bring His kingdom everywhere. And this we can only do when we understand our positioning before God. It's great to have you here, Denise, to share that with us.
Thank you, Wanda. It's a blessing to be here.
Now, we've started with the book of Acts. It's a practical guide to accessing the miracle power of God. It's a book that you wrote. And it's just so amazing. Last week we spoke about the heirs of the kingdom, sons of God. And we looked at pauper or prince, which was quite a revelation. We're going to have a look at the definition and what the difference is between the two. And we also looked at we need identity shift. We also touched on that. But today, I'd like for us to get more practical, so that we can understand the difference between a pauper and a prince. I don't think we always know. We think the two are the same. So a pauper would feel and act like a slave, right? It's works.
Yes.
If I work harder, then I'll get more favor kind of thing.
Yes.
What is the difference then? What would be the difference?
A prince, a true prince or princess, not just title-driven but identity-driven, would feel and act like a son or a daughter. Again, the story of the prodigal son, the older brother actually acted like a slave. He's just working for his goat, which is all a slave does or a worker does. Whereas if he were acting like an heir of a kingdom or a son, he would have had a concern for the whole thing and known it's all his anyway.
Yeah. That's incredible, because we often find that people would go into belief systems. I think of New Age, for instance, where people elevate. They've got this elevated kind of identity where they're untouchable. Nothing can hurt me. I'm in control, and I've got the serenity inside of me, and this is where my identity lies. And yet we can have exactly that, but we can still have a kingdom that we can still be an heir of a kingdom. We're not just walking with a grey identity and all peace, and let's embrace all the bad things in our lives and live with both in our lives, which is absolutely impossible. We know that that's not what Christ taught us. But the bottom line is we need to start acting like it.
Yes,
it's almost like people would say, you are the mother. Start acting like the mother.
That's so true. And I think that's what it is. We're at the stage in the church right now in history where God is saying to us to mature, to grow up, to be mature sons and daughters, to become a mature bride. And part of that is realizing we have the responsibility.
Right.
It's not just the whole thing about the supernatural, the whole thing about becoming children of God. It's not about our heads in the clouds. It's about heads in the clouds, but feet on the ground, relevant, changing things.
And we don't have to fight for a position anymore.
No.
Just act like a son and a daughter.
And it's so freeing when we don't have to fight for a position, especially not an earthly position anymore. When you realize just how false that is in a way. And what true positioning is in Christ.
And what a burden, if that's what you are seeking after.
What a burden.
Okay, so a pauper would be somebody where identity comes from what they have. When they get money, they lose sight of priorities and feed their greed. That would be a pauper. Doesn't mean to say that if you have money and if you are successful, that you're now a pauper.
No, not at all.
Let's hear very carefully what you wrote here. Identity comes from what they have.
Yes.
So what we're saying is this is what they have, and they find their identity in it. So the issue is not the money. The issue is the fact that they find the identity in it.
Exactly.
What would a prince and a princess look like?
They would have an identity coming from God. Right. So you can be a pauper and be absolutely rich or have nothing in the bank. You can be a prince and be in a similar financial position, but your identity comes from God. And because of that, your responsibility is different. So, for example, when they get money, a prince or a princess, now we're talking kingdom princes and princesses, they know it's for the kingdom first. They would use it for the advancement of the kingdom. And they understand that if any part is blessed, the whole is blessed. So they're not just focused on one specific section. They actually care about the whole thing. Like Jesus said, I'm about my Father's business, which is all of it.
Yeah, that's so amazing. I said the other day, if you have people working for a specific vision, something that they want done, say it's a conference or whatever, if they can't tell you what the vision is, then they are in it for themselves.
That's so true.
Because if it was really about the vision, it was really about the kingdom, we will not have to worry about what is my role.
Yes.
Where do I find my space?
Yes, that's
so
true.
Feel small, so must cut everyone down to size. So here we go. We say that paupers feel small, so now they cut everybody else around them to size. We must just not. I'm the leader here. I'm the senior leader here.
Yes.
In fact, I'm the senior seed. I'm the leading. I'm the, you know what I'm saying? Because I look at some of the protocols and hierarchy in some of our churches, and I'm thinking, goodness me, people, like where are the servants? We've lost them all. And is it not true that in that servanthood, in the understanding that I don't have to feel small in the first place.
Exactly.
That's where it all went wrong.
That's where it went wrong. And people feel small because they don't know who they are. They have to defend their territory, their position. They have to lord their position because they don't know who they are. And even if you look at the levels of leadership, positional leadership is level 1. Level 5 is the level of humility pairing in with servanthood. And that's what Christ resembled. So I love that story where it talks about Jesus washing the disciples' feet. It says, and Jesus, knowing who he was, where he came from and where he was going, got down on his knees and began to wash their feet. That needs to be the same for us. We need to know who we are. We need to know where we come from. We need to know where we're going. And from that, we can serve in the lowest possible way, and that's greatness. That's then the opposite, which is prince and princesses, able to build up people, empower others, serve others, set them up for greatness.
This is beautiful. It's so unlike the hierarchy of the world.
So opposite.
Because we think we start at the bottom and we're going to be promoted. Yes. But sometimes, Denise, let's be honest, in the prophetic ministry, we often find that prophets would say that would be what they prophesy, that God will elevate you and that you will, and we use that elevation and we sort of measure it to what we see in the world.
It's so true.
We're going to climb in our position in wherever God has positioned us.
Yes.
And you're turning it around now.
I often say it's the upside down kingdom. You know, when God speaks of elevation or God speaks of promotion, we determine it by the lenses we wear and the boxes we know. But Jesus's understanding of the highest level of leadership is serve. And even the prophetic and the apostolic, he said, first the apostles and the prophets. But if we understand that, it's the foundation. It's like the bottom, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. Now, long ago, there was a wonderful pastor, and he was from Kenya. And I attended one of his services, and I'm now being very, very transparent here. And he called me after the service, and he said, God gave me a word for you. And there I was, somebody who sings and works for God in the kingdom, and it's all great and wonderful. And he said, God showed me that you are wearing a garment and you're trying to button up the garment, but you keep on lacking. You always feel as though things are not right. You want to close and button and so on. So he used the word lacking. It feels like you've got a lack. You always feel that there's something else you have to accomplish before you whatever.
Yes.
And that's almost the question mark.
Yes.
We lack because we always think it should have been different.
Yes. And I think that's another mark of having a pauper spirit is that we live in that place or there's areas of our lives where we're not living in the abundance of God, in the fact that everything he has is ours, or we're living in that place where there's a whole kingdom. And I think that's what God is exposing. And we all have it. We all have it. Areas in our hearts where we're still living from want and from lack. And it doesn't mean physically. Lack or fullness, we need to understand in spiritual terms that place of abundance in the spirit must rule above the material.
And if I think of the people, some of the Christians that are persecuted in some of the countries, you would often find that they say, "I have the fullness."
Yes.
They lack so much in the natural.
Yes.
And we almost want to say, "But you must be crazy. This is not even possible." And they would say, "But I live in abundance."
Yes.
And that's the kind of freedom
it's an
we really
internal
want.
state of being, isn't it, Wanda?
Yeah, it's incredible.
And even if we took it physically, then as heirs of the God of God, we need to be like Paul, saying, "Well, I've known plenty and I've known little, but even in little, there's contentment because you actually ultimately know what kingdom you belong to."
And here is the ultimate freedom flag, and that is how much you feel that you have to prove yourself or prove whatever, your integrity or your character. You feel that it's almost overwhelming because it's so much that you have to prove. But the prince and the princess thinks differently.
Yes, they have nothing to prove. And I think that is one of the big things for all of us. That's one of the shifts, is getting to the place where you're not trying to prove to someone else. You're not doing things to impress. You're not doing things to prove everybody wrong that spoke negative things. You're just living with a purpose and an eternal perspective, and you're not focused on yourself. You're focused on others. The person who has much to prove, their entire focus is on themselves. And in that way, we become small people.
That's incredible. Well, we've only came halfway with the differences between a pauper and a prince, and we are definitely going to go through it right till the end. It's something that I think most of us can identify with, if not all of us. It's the Book of Acts. It's written by Denise Padayachee, and if you're interested in getting hold of this book, you're more than welcome to also contact the Christian Literature Fund, the publishers. So you can also just go to the website and you'll find it all there. Or you can contact Denise by just visiting her website, and you'll find all the contact details there and see more about what the ministry is about. So it's wells.training.co. So let me say it again, it's wells.training.co. No ZA, just .co. Surely people will remember that because it's so different. Denise, thank you very much.
Thank you, Wanda.